So, if you don't believe in the far-left progressive dogma, the woke religion as I call it, if you don't believe in what the Democrats stand for, and believe me, it is what they stand for now, it's taken over the Democrat Party. Whether it's systematic racism, or white supremacy is everywhere, or climate change is destroying the planet, or believing in freaking pronouns, whatever part of the woke agenda you want to think of, it controls the Democrat Party. It doesn't matter if old establishment elites like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, or even Joe Biden, who are all just trying to hang on to their power, they're going to have to capitulate to it. Whether they believe it or not, they're going to have to in order to keep their status in the party. And let's be honest, they don't care. They'll say they believe it left and right, up and down, whatever. If it gives them power, so be it. But if you don't believe it, if you think it's nonsense, if you dare criticize it, and then on top of that, if you had the gall to support Trump, oh boy, that's it. You're a white supremacist. You're a racist. And you need to be deprogrammed. Which is what Democrats and people on the left are now talking about. They're talking about how are they going to deprogram Trump supporters.
Okay, and as much as I'm worried about these loons who break into government, I'm actually more worried about the loons who did get elected. Because, I mean, what do you do about these people? There's 147 Republicans in Congress who still don't concede that Trump lost the election. What do you do about people who are in the government who don't believe in our way of government?
It is so shocking. Not only are they not conceding, Bill, but there's thoughts that there might have been some collusion among members of Congress. Some are refusing to go through magnometers or whatever you call them to check for weapons. They're not wearing masks during the siege. I mean, it's really bizarre, isn't it, when you think about how AWOL so many of these members of Congress have gotten. But I also think some of them are believing the garbage that they are being fed 24/7 on the internet by their constituents, and they bought into this big lie. And the question is, how are we going to really almost deprogram these people who have signed up for the cult of Trump? To really almost deprogram these people who have signed up for the cult of Trump. Deprogram.
So this is crazy. And of course, they use the tired argument of claiming people who support President Trump are in a cult, as if the same argument can't be applied to them. But whatever. Both sides are going to defend their position and claim the other side is a cult. I get that. But I can guarantee when the left starts tattooing their pronouns on their forehead, they'll still be saying Trump supporters and everyone on the right are in a cult. Whatever. Okay. All we can do is just roll our eyes and move on at that point. But seriously, this is what they're talking about. That Trump supporters are in a cult. That they're mostly white, as if that means anything. And leave it to racists to bring up race. But this is something they're seriously talking about. They're seriously discussing it. That all these people on the right need to be deprogrammed.
We have, there are millions of Americans, almost all white, almost all Republicans, who somehow need to be deprogrammed. It's as if they're members of a cult, the Trumpist cult, and who have to be deprogrammed. Do you have any idea how we start that process, even much less complete it?
Yeah, I don't. I'm a journalist. I certainly don't know how we can stop people. I know we can look to history, though. What ultimately breaks that power structure in the South is enforcement, right? There has to be consequences. And then once you get those consequences, I think then people have to take a second look at their actions, and they have to be much more afraid to do the types of kind of violence that we saw.
Now, pay close attention to what she's saying. She's talking about looking at history, the South, and enforcement. She's talking about the Civil War. She's asserting that Trump supporters and the riot are all white supremacists and racist. Blah, blah, blah. We know that's not true. But she's talking about using force to silence people and to make people afraid to express themselves. Now, this is in context of the Capitol protest, but we all know these people would defend BLM and Antifa riots, so it's not about the violence. It's about the ideology behind them. She agrees with one and not the other. So once again, it's the okay when we do it, but not when you do it situation. So the question is, in what ways will they try to shut people down and try to deprogram them? Well, some think targeting Republicans and using the government to take away their children to be placed in re-education camps is one solution.
Anyone Biden wins will go through all the Republican voters, and Homeland Security will take the children away. How about that? And we'll put them into re-education camps.
Amen.
These kids who are growing up knowing nothing but Trump, for 4 years, you gotta wonder what they're going to be like. Are we raising a generation of intolerant, horrible people, horrible kids?
So they're not just going to target Trump supporters. Some even want to target their children. And let's face it, they're already doing that. They've been doing that. All you have to do is look at the state of colleges and even public schools, where the teachings of social justice and critical race theory is pretty much the order of the day. Whether it's, either it's being mandated that it be taught, or if it's not, and in some cases being told that it's off limits, leftist teachers who are activists will still try to sneak it in anyways. Now Biden's own nominee for education secretary is a man who oversaw the creation of soon-to-be mandated critical race theory courses for high schoolers in Connecticut. All of these social justice, critical race theory studies, including all the tenets of the woke religion, whether it's the woke trinity of diversity, inclusion, and equity, to concepts like white privilege and white supremacy, to everything involved with the LGBT movement with pronouns and transgenders. This is all indoctrination into the woke religion. Look at this stuff. This is what's being taught to third graders in California. 8 and 9-year-olds. The dominant culture. Social identities. Asking kids what part of your identity holds power and privilege. Teaching them that people who don't benefit from their social identity, who are in the subordinate culture, have little to no privilege or power. Look at this sick stuff being taught to children in elementary school. And it's not just happening in California.
So the president's decision to ban critical race theory indoctrination in federal agencies earlier this month was an important step. But you'd be wrong if you thought this poison is confined only to the U.S. government. Just about every single K-12 school in America has ramped up their propaganda efforts this year to teach children that this is a fundamentally bad country, that some people are fundamentally flawed because of the way they look, and that the whole American experiment is basically essentially racist and therefore immoral. Even though the 1619 Project contains fundamental and verifiable historical falsehoods, it's garbage, it's not real history, teachers in Chicago, Newark, New Jersey, and Washington are already using it in their classrooms. No one stopped them, so they are. We're going to look back on this in shame and horror. Even schools that haven't specifically adopted the 1619 Project are taking a similar approach. Sometimes they're even more radical. This show has obtained a lesson plan from the Buffalo Public School System that goes far beyond teaching bad history and deliberately advances the agenda of Black Lives Matter, of a political organization. For example, one lesson plan teaches 4th and 5th graders to question the importance of their parents, of their own mothers and fathers. The lesson plan instructs teachers to discuss various, quote, guiding principles with students, including so-called black villages that assist in the, and we're quoting now, disruption of Western nuclear family dynamics and a return to the collective village that takes care of each other. They're teaching this to your kids, that your family should be destroyed.
And it's not just in schools. It's now basically in every cultural institution. Whether it's Hollywood with movies and TV, or in the music industry and pop culture, or every major corporation virtue signaling over BLM and trans rights or some other injustice. The deprogramming is already underway through the indoctrination of social justice that is being pumped into every portion of society. And that's what this is. The deprogramming is you're either going to get on board or you're not going to be left alone. You're going to be made to raise your fist in support of Black Lives Matter, or you're going to be forced to acknowledge that trans women are women. You're going to be told either submit or be pushed out of society.
So, let us brace ourselves. The task is twofold. The terrorist Trump must be defeated, must be destroyed, must be devoured at the ballot box. And then he and his enablers and his supporters and his collaborators and the Mike Lees and the William Barrs and the Sean Hannitys and the Mike Pences and the Rudy Giulianis and the Kyle Rittenhouses and the Amy Coney Barretts must be prosecuted and convicted and removed from our society while we try to rebuild it.
And this has been happening for months and even years, as people who speak out against woke leftist dogma or simply just don't want to play along are being deplatformed from social media. Then when they're either forced to use alternatives or just want to get out before they get the axe themselves, the alt-tech sites themselves are targeted for deplatforming. We saw it when Sargon of Akkad, aka Carl Benjamin, was thrown off of Patreon. When he went to Subscribestar, the Silicon Valley cartel tried to take it down. We saw it when the media targeted Gab as a haven for far-right Nazis. And now the most recent example is the takedown of Parler. Then we see the leftist cancel culture get even more extreme by going after people to get them fired from their jobs. It's getting to the point where even associating with alt-tech sites warrants being fired. I mean, some had even had their bank accounts canceled for being labeled as far-right. And this is the end goal, to banish from society anyone that doesn't want to conform. You either get deprogrammed or deplatformed. Those are your options as far as the radical left and elite establishment is concerned. And they mean it, as we can see from this rant from Palmer Report. So this is a long rant, but he basically goes on the usual leftist tirade that people on the right, or conservatives, are all evil that hate other groups and want to destroy them because they don't believe in equality. As he puts it, it's time to acknowledge that conservatism isn't just a political view. It means you're the very bottom rung of society, dangerous and deranged. He even says that people who flaunt their conservatism are psychotic. And what is his solution for these psychotic people? As he says, conservatives cannot be teachers, police officers, doctors, lawyers, coaches, or bosses. It's constitutionally unfair to others who are subjected to their conservative deranged judgment. Conservatives can do menial work until they're ready to join the human race. And then he goes on to say, we should rehabilitate any conservatives who are willing to try. We should pay for them to undergo therapy and retraining so they can understand the world around them. So in other words, deprogramming. He goes on to finish with, first we must get them out of positions of influence because they're infringing on the rights of others. So this is it. Again, this is the end goal. A total takeover of society. And this isn't just some fringe idea on the left. AOC, a sitting congresswoman, wants funding to deprogram white supremacists. And when you understand what she means when she's talking about white supremacists, you understand that she basically means everyone that disagrees with her. I mean, this is a sentiment that goes from Democrat politicians to the very people who work on their campaigns, as we discovered from campaign members for Bernie Sanders.
Do you even think that some of these, like, MAGA people could even be re-educated?
I mean, we gotta try. I mean, like, in Nazi Germany, after the fall of the Nazi Party, there was a shit ton of the populace that was f***ing Nazified. I mean, like, Germany had to spend billions of dollars re-educating fucking people to not be Nazis. Like, we're probably going to have to do the same thing here. And that's kind of what Bernie's like, like, hey, free education for everybody, because we're going to have to teach you not to be a Nazi. There's a reason Joseph Stalin had gulags, right? Mm-hmm. And actually, gulags were a lot better than like what like the CIA has told us that they were. Like, people were actually paid a living wage in gulags. they had conjugal visits in gulags. Gulags were actually meant for like re-education.
So this is the world we're living in 2021. The Democrat Party and the radical left are seriously ready to start marching people into gulags for re-education if those that disagree or even actively oppose them don't fall in line. Be deprogrammed or be deplatformed. That's the choice they've given us. And now with the power of the presidency and Congress, along with all the money of Wall Street and all the influence of legacy media and social media behind them, they have the means to do it. The only question is, how are the American people going to fight back? Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. Also, look me up on other social media sites, as I'm on most main and alt-tech platforms. Definitely look me up on Gab and subscribe to me there, as Gab is now the alt-tech place to be that we all need to support. So thanks again, and God bless.